this is trying to show the regional impacts of climate change, and the red states represent the states that have less than 30% of their power generated from coal-fired power plants. The green states are states that have excess of 50% of the generation from coal-fired power plants, or greater than 50%, and the orange is like in between. And so Illinois, it's orange, but really the northern portion is mainly nuclear, and the southern portion is the generations from coal-fired power plants. So really the southern portion would be green. But the reason why I wanted to point this out is because the legislation that's being proposed is generally from either the west or the east coast, and so they would have maybe more to gain from this type of legislation. But it would impact the majority of the United States. They would see similar results as I described. So, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. There is a way that we can try to reduce our emissions, and this is something that we worked with, something called the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI, and they tried to come up with a plan on how we can get there, how we can reduce our emissions. And so what you see is like kind of a rainbow, different layers. And really what this is showing us is that there isn't one easy solution. It's going to take many different things to get there. So I'll just go through some of the different technologies and things that we can do. One is energy efficiency, like I mentioned. Also, if we improved our transmission and distribution lines, if we made them more efficient, because they're older, so we need to make some upgrades. Also, if we introduce more renewable energy, more nuclear power. In the United States, we haven't built a nuclear power plant since the 80s. Also, if we can improve our fossil fuel efficiency, the generation at our coal power plants. Also, if we introduce more carbon capture and sequestration, and this is something that's relatively new, and it's becoming more and more on a large scale. It's been more R&D to this point, but it's becoming more popular. Also, we feel that if we introduce electric transportation, this is like plug-in electric vehicles. Even if we generate the electricity from our coal-fired power plants, the CO2 emissions are still less than that compared to gasoline. And then finally, if we improve our technologies, called electro technologies, like if the appliances become smarter, if they use less energy, like just taking what we have, the Energy Star, and improving upon it. So it's possible to get there. So finally, I just want to share some conclusions, and I just want to make it clear that at Ameren we do support climate change legislation. We just want to make sure that it's fair to our customers, and that people, it doesn't cause abrupt changes to our lifestyles. So one thing that's important, we think that the timelines and the targets are pretty aggressive, especially in the early years, because the technology doesn't exist right now to try to make a lot of these changes. Also, we think that there should be a cap on the price of these allowances, so it would help prevent shock to the customers. And we do think that the allowances should be allocated as opposed to an auction. And then we want to make sure that there's something called like an off-ramp. And what that means is, like, if we see that a lot of companies are moving overseas, or if there are a lot of changes to the way we do business, we want the government to take a step back and reevaluate and look at things. We want to make sure that there aren't any restrictions on offsets. And then finally, we want to recognize the potential impact that electric vehicles have on reducing emissions, and to make sure that we get allowances that help us with that transition. So that's all that I have right now, but if you guys have any questions for me.
I don't know if you can answer it since you're not from one of the state companies, but there seems to be significant amount of differences between Missouri and Illinois and how they're handling stuff along this line, like renewable energy for one. Is that because the legislation's making them do it in Missouri and not here, or Illinois, but all we hear is the stations in St. Louis area and not anything from Illinois as far as news on what's going on?
I guess I think there's a lot of stuff going on in Illinois as well as Missouri. I don't know why that really isn't being talked about in the news. necessarily, but in Illinois, there are certain standards regarding renewable energy. They do have something called a renewable portfolio standard, where they're requiring a certain amount of renewable energy. And
We just
I
don't
know.
hear about it in Illinois.
You just don't hear about it.
It's like, I know Missouri has net metering, I have no idea what we have in Illinois.
Illinois does too.
Okay.
Yes, actually, and at ameren.com, it's a great site. There's a lot of information specifically for Illinois. So in Illinois, yes, there is net metering and time of use rates and different things like that. So it's a little bit different because in the state of Missouri, it's regulated utilities. So at Ameren, we do everything from generation to distribution, whereas in Illinois, everything's separate. It's deregulated. So the generation is separate from the distribution company. So maybe that's why you don't hear about it